Phillies on top.
But this club just does not die.
He's under it. He's got it. And the game is over. Vasquez swung on, crushed, and the Phillies are going to lead it 4-0. Just a towering fly ball to straightaway left. Schwarber was ready. Bryce Harper has put the Phillies on top.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Phrankly Phils podcast. I am your host, Adam Mack. We are live here this Tuesday evening on the AAT Sports Network. I'm just going to pay the bills real quick. Obviously, we got the Phrankly Phils podcast tonight at about 7:30. Make sure at 9 o'clock tonight you tune into the Sports Wheelhouse with my boys, JD and Chip. Should be a good show today. But with the Phillies, as always, on Tuesdays. Sorry, Chip. It is all about the Phillies on Tuesday nights. And we're going to keep that going tonight. So we're going to get into it. Obviously, we're in the final stretch of games for the Phillies. Looking at it right now, after the Atlanta series, we have 5 series left till we get to the playoffs. Currently, the Phillies have a 3.5 game lead for the wild card, holding the first wild card position over the likes of Chicago, Arizona, San Francisco, and Miami. We're going to talk about 2 different things today. What do the Phillies need to do in order to make the playoffs? And obviously, what do the Phillies need to do? And the Phillies are legitimate World Series contenders heading into the postseason this year. So we're going to break it down real quickly. Looking at the Phillies' schedule, once they wrap up this game tonight with Atlanta, they head on the road for a 3-game series with the Cardinals, then 3 games in Atlanta. Then they return home for back-to-back series with the Mets, the Pirates, before they end the regular season away at Citi Field against the Mets. Looking at that schedule is a very favorable schedule, and the one series I want to kind of highlight that I think is going to make or break the Phillies season is that away series with the Atlanta Braves. I think going into it, the series of the Cardinals is going to be a favorable matchup. Phillies have always played them fairly well, even dating back to the regular season of last year. So I really like the Phillies' chances in that. But I want to focus on the Atlanta series away. Hopefully by then the Braves have already clinched the division, so that will be off their radar, and they could start to looking at the projected starters. Game 1 is going to be Wheeler versus Stephen Wright, then Christopher Sanchez versus Max Fried, and then the final game of the series, Aaron Nola versus Spencer Strider. On paper, that's a very tough series for the Phillies. You're getting their 3 top pitchers from the Braves, and again, no guarantees. The Braves don't necessarily have to have clinched the division by then, so they're going to be all in till they clinch that division. I believe they can clinch it in their next series, whoever that may be. I believe there was a chance that they could actually clinch the series in Philadelphia, so I know their magic number is very slim. However, I hope, big thing for the Phillies, that they have that Braves have that division wrapped up before the Phillies come into town. Hopefully by then, Brian Snitker and the Braves have that locked up, giving the Phillies an opportunity to win some games. Hopefully the Braves start to rest some guys once that division is locked up. But looking at it right now, the Braves are going to have their 3 top pitchers going for the Phillies against the Phillies. That series is a very frightening thing. Phillies obviously will have Zach Wheeler to get us started. He's obviously been historically very strong against the Braves. Christopher Sanchez has been a very surprise and solid pitcher for the Phillies. But the last pitcher that really makes me nervous is Aaron Nola. Like Chip, shout out Chip Kagi, what he always says, Aaron Nola is consistently inconsistent. He's came off a very rough start. I think what was his last series? I believe it was against the Marlins. Not the great. I'm saying looking forward to. Obviously, he had the great start against them in the playoffs last year. But Aaron Nola is not the same pitcher this year. He's been incredibly inconsistent this year. That series right there is a big question mark for the Phillies. And for me, that's going to make or break if the Phillies make the playoffs, right? during that series. I think if they can take 2 of 3 from Atlanta during that series, it's going to give them so much momentum going into the Mets series. 4 games against the Mets, not going to be an easy task, even though the Mets are, the Mets will continue to Met. They do always play the Phillies very, very well, and especially in a 4-game series. Hard to take that. It's going to come down to momentum and getting hot at the right time. We saw it last year with the Phillies. It came down to they got hot at the right time. They got good momentum to end the season. They took that momentum into the playoffs, and they rode it all the way to Game 6 of the World Series. That series with Atlanta on the road, taking 2 or 3 would be absolutely huge for the Phillies and help them ride momentum into the Mets series and then take that into the Pittsburgh. I like our chances against Pittsburgh. Again, historically bad franchise this season, not been playing well. However, they still can be trap games. The Phillies have been known and consistently beat themselves up and to beat themselves. I think taking 2 or 3 from Atlanta, if Nola can get together just a decent start, I have high hopes for Wheeler. I have high hopes for Christopher Sanchez. So many question marks. One nice thing is Phillies have always hit Spencer Strider very well. There was the one start earlier this season where Spencer Strider completely dominated the Phillies, but for the most part, Phillies have always hit Strider well. So that's going to be the big question mark for the Phillies. But looking at the other 4 teams that the Phillies are in contention with, you have the Cubs, who I believe are just a game and a half back of the Phillies for the first wild card spot. Arizona is 3.5. The Giants are a game and a half, and the Marlins are a game and a half back of Arizona. So those are the few teams that are in contention. Right now, the Marlins are 7-3 in their last few games, have been getting very hot. Sandy Alcantara going to the IL is a big blow for that team. But those are the big teams that are in contention. And I want to break down kind of their schedules. Looking at the schedules for Chicago, right now they're today. Right now they're in the middle of a series with Colorado, very winnable series right there. Then they play Arizona, then Pittsburgh, return for 3-game series against Colorado, 3 games against Atlanta, and then 3 games against Milwaukee. The second to last series against Atlanta is going to be a favorable series for them because just like I just said at the Phillies, more than likely by then they will have wrapped up the NL East and they will not be going full strength. I believe they are very close to locking up the first seed in the NL as well. So they'll get home field advantage throughout the playoffs. They obviously are the best team in baseball for a reason. By then, I foresee them having locked up everything, having locked up home field advantage throughout the playoffs. So it's a very favorable series for them. Going on to the Milwaukee series, that's going to be a tough one because Milwaukee and the Cubs are in a very tight playoff race at the moment right now. Chicago's only 3 games back of Milwaukee. So I don't believe that is definitely a series and a division that might not even be locked up by that last series. So circle that as a possibility of, winner take all for the NL Central and who's going to the wild card series. I like that as a good possibility for the Phillies. The one thing I like about the Phillies, with the exception of the Atlanta, everybody's pretty much out of playoff contention for the Phillies schedules. No one's really competing for a playoff spot. Obviously, those can be trap games for the Phillies. However, looking at the Cubs, they do play Arizona, who's in a tight playoff battle. They play the Atlanta, which is never an easy series, and then they have to end the series on the road against the Brewers. Again, not an ideal scenario for the Cubs. Gives the Phillies a good opportunity to hopefully win some games. For the Cubs, not an ideal schedule, especially for teams like Arizona, who's, again, similar playoff situation in a tight playoff race. Looking at Arizona's schedule, they're in a series right now with the Mets. Then they play the Cubs. Then they play the Giants, another team that is in contention for the wild card. They then play the Yankees, then the Chicago White Sox, and then the end of the year with Houston. Again, pretty favorable schedule situation for the Phillies. Again, they're playing the Mets right now. Mets are going to Met. But then they have to play the Cubs. As long as one team does not sweep, it's an ideal scenario for the Phillies. They have a 2-game series with the Giants. Again, ideal scenario for the Phillies. One of the 2 teams is going to win. One of the teams is going to win. One of the teams is going to lose. will give an opportunity for the Phillies to pad their lead. Going to Yankee Stadium is never an easy task, even though the Yankees are an absolute abysmal franchise at the moment. 3 games against the White Sox is an ideal scenario right now. Not an ideal scenario for the Phillies. However, 3 games against the Astros, who are, again, in a very tight AL West scenario right now. It's a good situation to be in for the Phillies. Hopefully by then the Astros have not wrapped up the division or they're in a very tight race. Allow them to go full strength and beat up on a little bit on the Diamondbacks. Biggest ideal for keep seeing this over and over again. The Phillies schedule is super favorable because they have no teams really in contention for anything. Hopefully by the time they get to the Atlanta series, the Braves have already locked up the NL East and will be very close to locking up home field advantage throughout the playoffs if they will not do it already. Looking at San Francisco, right now they have a series with Cleveland, again, who's also in a very tight playoff race. Colorado, very easy wins. Arizona at the Dodgers, then the Padres, and then they end the season again with the Dodgers. Very good schedule for the Phillies. One other thing, you can never trust a Gabe Kapler run team. He did it with the Phillies. He's choked away with the Giants. You can never really trust Gabe Kapler in situations like this. However, even if finishing it off with the Marlins, who are right now in a 4-game series with the Brewers, then they have a 3-game series with Atlanta, 3-game series with the Mets, another 3-game series with the Brewers, 3-game series with the Mets, and a 3-game series with Padres. Pretty much when I come to see that, you have 7 games against the NL Central leading Milwaukee Brewers, who are in a very tight playoff race, who are the superior team over the Marlins, probably the superior team over the Phillies. Not a team I really want to be playing 7 games with just a couple games left in the season. Not an ideal scenario. Looking at the Atlanta series, that is a tough series for them because, like I keep saying about Atlanta, they want to wrap up the division. They want to wrap up home field advantage throughout the playoffs. It's going to happen during that Miami series. They're going to go out them full strength. Milwaukee's going to go out them full strength. The Mets are going to Met. It is a favorable schedule that they end the season with 3 games at Pittsburgh. Not an ideal scenario right there for the Phillies. But overall, looking at it, you can count the Giants out. You can never trust a Gabe Kapler run team like that. Ultimately, the final 3 wildcard spots are going to come out of the Phillies, the Cubs, the Diamondbacks, in my opinion, the Marlins. They're going to be the 4 teams that are going to be in contention for it. If I'm a Phillies fan, I do feel comfortable with how it lines up. Favorable schedule for us. Now it's going to come down to the Phillies actually having to step up and figure out what they want to do. So looking at this Phillies team right now, see if we can bring it up. When it comes to pitching, we need to get our best out of the pitchers. We always get our best out of Wheeler. Taijuan Walker, he's, in my opinion, been bailed out by a really good offense this season. He needs to kind of lock it down. Ranger needs to kind of keep doing it. He's been hot lately. Keep building on that momentum. But for me, you need to keep circling Aaron Nola's name. Aaron Nola is going to be the reason this team makes a long playoff run or not. He is the number 2 starter. Rob Thompson has already announced that. He's going to be the number 2 starter throughout the playoffs and the rest of the season. If he's going to be consistently inconsistent like he has been throughout his entire career, we are in very, very deep trouble. Looking at the rest of the schedule, he's going to get a lot more starts down the stretch. He's a guy that Rob Thompson trusts. He's a veteran guy. I get that kind of part of it, but he's too inconsistent where every win matters in this situation. He's going to determine how this team does because of his pitching. When it comes to the starters, besides Noel, I really don't have many crazy worries about him. I really do like our starting rotation, all 5 of them. I think Michael Lorenzen will start to transition over to the bullpen. He is primarily a bullpen guy. He's proven to be madly inconsistent past the 3rd or 4th inning. I think moving him over to the bullpen where he has been historically more comfortable, has a lot better production, is going to benefit him and benefit the club long term. So looking at that, I love Wheeler. I love Ranger. I love Taijuan Walker. I love Christopher Sanchez. I think those 4 guys are definitely going to put the Phillies in good positions to win. Now comes to the other half of the pitching is the bullpen. The bullpen for me right now is starting to crumble. Jose Alvarado and Sir Anthony have not been reliable as of late. Dylan Covey is a waste of space. Hoffman has been an improvement to what we were expecting, but still not great. Craig Kimbrell needs a 2 or 3 run lead. So the bullpen really needs to needs to start locking this shit down. The bullpen has been historically better than what we've seen in past from Phillies bullpens, and we do know the skills are there. We do know the talent is there. They need to start locking these games down, because as much as, the Phillies schedule is a favorable schedule for them long term, ultimately the bullpen is going to make or break these wins. The offense has been putting the team in positions to win. They've been putting up big numbers even against the high quality talent. The bullpen needs to now support the offense. Looking at the offense, the big player for me that needs to kind of step up is going to be JT Realmuto. Again, still the best catcher. Defensively, is the best catcher in all of baseball. Offensively, he's taken a major step back, in my opinion. In my opinion, this season. We need to start seeing more from him. Hopefully, see more from him and try to get that offense going. And then the final piece to it, I think Rob Thompson needs to solidify that lineup. We've seen too many lineup changes throughout the season. We're 3 weeks away from the regular season being over, and I don't even know what this team's identity is. We've solidified, the issues with Schwarber and Harper in the outfield. Everyone has their role when it comes to defensive alignments. It's time to put into place that lineup. It's time to solidify it. It's time for everyone to learn their roles. In my opinion, the only place in the lineup that we've solidified is the leadoff position, and it's the one position of our lineup that has caused so much controversy with Kyle Schwarber. I think we stick with that. I roll with it. It's worked. It's worked for him. It's worked for the team. Keep Schwarber as the leadoff hitter. But 2 through 9, nothing has been solidified. We've seen so many lineup changes, so many other defensive alignments. Phillies need to get this shit under control so we can make this run into the playoffs. The best thing I think for the Phillies last year was everyone knew their role heading into the series with St. Louis. They used the same lineups pretty much from the St. Louis series all the way through the World Series, with a couple tweaks depending on matchups versus the pitcher. Right now, Rob Thompson has been running with too many lineups, too many questionable calls. He needs to solidify that lineup sooner rather than later. I don't want to get to the playoffs and really have a question mark of who's hitting where in this lineup. This is the things that needed to be determined a few weeks ago. The lineup is finally back. It's fully healthy. Everyone is playing up to their potential. Turner is back to what we were expecting him to be. It is time to now solidify this lineup. We have solidified our pitching rotation. We've solidified our bullpen. We need to solidify our batting order right now. It is too much of a mess, too many different moving pieces, too many combinations. If the Phillies want to make a good run in the playoffs, they need to understand their roles. They need to know who they're hitting up against. They need to know all that kind of stuff in order for them to have a good run in the playoffs. We're going to close the show with this, kind of focus on, obviously the expectations for the Phillies are high. They just went to the World Series, 2 games away from winning it all. Looking at the 2023 Phillies, the big question mark is, are they legitimate World Series contenders? The big thing is going to be, can they get hot at the right time? Offensively, they are one of, if not the best offensive teams in all of baseball. We have seen it. The ovation for Trey Turner has been absolutely phenomenal. Harper is still an MVP. Nick Castellanos is, in my opinion, on his way to a Silver Slugger award. Bryson Stott is proven that he's going to be a future Gold Glove and a Silver Slugger. Bohm has been coming together. Johan Rojas has been a big surprise. Schwarber's been a good leadoff hitter. Like, offensively, this is the best lineup in all of baseball. The big issues and big concerns with the team are going to be the pitching. If we can get our act together when it comes to pitching, if the rotation can give us 5-6 innings, if the bullpen can come in and fully lock down on a consistent basis, the Phillies will be serious contenders to win the National League and win the World Series again this year. However, the way they are playing right now, the way they've been playing the last couple of weeks, mostly the starting rotation and the bullpen, the incredible level of inconsistency we've seen from the starting rotation and the bullpen. It's going, for me right now, it's an early exit. It's maybe winning the wild card series and getting absolutely smacked by the Braves and divisional series. If the bullpen can really start to lock games down, Craig Kimbrell will go back to his midseason form where he was perfect in save opportunities. If Aaron Nola can just be a little bit more consistent, if Wheeler can keep it lights up, if Taijuan Walker can, not rely on the Phillies hitting 10 runs in his outings, Ranger keep being Ranger, Michael Lorenzen go to the bullpen. If the starting rotation can get us 5-6 innings and the bullpen can lock down, the Phillies can be series contenders to win the World Series. The way they are playing right now, they are not serious World Series contenders. They got a few weeks left to kind of figure this shit out. Right now, the answer for me is no, they're not serious World Series contenders. The lineup and the offense are some of the best in baseball, but defensively, there's a lot of concerns, and the pitching is still the biggest weakness for the Phillies, and there's too much inconsistency from the starters all the way to the end of the bullpen that I don't have faith in them. I think they'll still make the playoffs, like I kind of explained at the early part of the show. The schedule for the Phillies really favors the Phillies. They don't play any tough opponents. Hopefully by the time they get to the Atlanta series, Atlanta has wrapped up the division. They do play Atlanta fairly well. If we can take 2 or 3 from that series, the wild card is ours. It's nice that the Cubs, the Diamondbacks, the Giants, and the Marlins are all going to kind of beat up on each other and don't have favorable schedules. Phillies schedule favors them. I see the Phillies making the playoffs. They'll be a wild card team. I do foresee them taking the top wild card spot and hosting either the Cubs or the Diamondbacks. I prefer the Diamondbacks. We played them a little bit better than we have the Cubs this year. But Phillies have a lot to figure out. They need to solidify that batting order soon. The offense needs to keep going, and the pitching really needs to get their acts together because right now the pitching is the weakness for the Phillies. So lots of kind of unwrapped right there. It's been a lot of fun. We have just a few series left. Make sure every Sunday we have the Max Minors report where we report on the Phillies farm system, hear what's going on in the minor leagues from low A ball all the way up to triple A. Make sure you like, share, subscribe to the AAT Sports Network. Make sure you follow all the different shows. Monday, you got Across the Pitch, talk about Union Soccer. Tuesdays, obviously, Phrankly Phils, between 7 and 8 with myself. 9 o'clock, you have the Sports Wheelhouse with Chip and JD. Always a fun and entertaining show. Wednesday, you have, obviously, the Phillies weekly report. And obviously, you have Birds, Beers, and BS every Friday with Jeff and Peanut. Got a great group of shows on this network. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And as always, let's ring the bell. And I'm Adam Mack, and we will see you all Sunday for the Max Minors Report.